Maeve had invaded Ulster to conquer and to steal the famous Bull of Cooley. But even though the Ulstermen were struck down by pain and unable to fight, Cuchulainn was not, and managed to single-handedly defend Ulster against the armies of Maeve. All of her tricks, sending her best warriors, sending Fergus MacReish, who was an ally of Cuchulainn, and even sending the Morrigan herself, were in vain. But she still had the last trick in her reservoir, that she thought to be the solution to finally get rid of Cuchulainn. Welcome to the second part of the Táin Bó Cúailnge, the cattle raid of Cooley. If you haven't seen the first part yet, please follow the link above. Otherwise, let's see whether or not Maeve could finally win over the hero of Ulster. Maeve knew that within her lines she had another warrior whom Cuchulainn knew. She sent a messenger and let word get out that Ferdia MacDarman, who was like a foster brother to Cuchulainn and with whom he had trained together under Scar, was to see her at once. This would be her ultimate weapon, for Ferdiad was as close to an equal to Cuchulainn as there was. And what was even more important, he was close to Cuchulainn's heart. And so, the Ulsterman would have to lay down his weapon and let Maeve invade Ulster to save his friend. A cunning plan, with only one flaw. Ferdiad didn't want to fight Cuchulainn either. Out of duty to his queen, and not to have his name blackened, he went to Maeve, and attended the feast she gave in his honor. But more than once he made clear that he did not intend to fight his old friend. But he couldn't help but notice that he was seated next to a beautiful young maiden, which seemingly tried to seduce the young warrior. It was Finnevere, one of the daughters of Maeve. Both women encouraged the young lad to drink, over and over again. Meanwhile, Maeve didn't stop trying to convince Ferdiad that fighting his friend would be worthwhile for him. For in return, he would receive land and riches, the best cattle in the land, and the hand of Finnevere in marriage. But Ferdiad refused. And so, Maeve tried another tactic. She turned away and mumbled, just loud enough for Ferdiad to hear, that Cuchulainn was right about him after all. Ferdiad demanded to know what she meant. And she replied that Cuchulainn had told her that Ferdiad would never fight him, for he was too much of a coward, and he knew he wouldn't stand a chance. This got to Ferdiad, who believed that his so-called friend was actually able to say something like that. In his anger, he finally agreed to fight Cuchulainn, be it just to prove that he was the best warrior in all of Ireland. The next day came, and Cuchulainn waited for his next challenger. But he was devastated when he saw his old companion and brother-in-arms coming towards him. He saw the hatred in his eyes and knew that no begging or pleading would stop Ferdiad from starting this fight. The fight began, and soon both men had to recognize that they were equal in every way. Both were strong and skilled, and had even learned the same techniques from the same teacher, Scar. There were only two things that separated them: their possessions. While Cuchulainn still had the gay bullock he once received from Scar, a spear that always hits its target when thrown by foot. Ferdiad had received a coat of armor, made out of the bones of a sea monster, that could withstand even the sharpest of blades. And so the fight went on and on. But since both men were men of honor, they made an agreement. As soon as the sun went down, they would stop fighting and let each other heal and rest until the next morning, when they would start fighting again until one of them was victorious. And so they did. They fought for 5 whole days, while at night they shared food and even helped tending each other's wounds, to be able to fight to the best of their abilities the next day. And they even slept back to back, because neither of them wanted to win by trickery, but by sheer strength and skill. But on the 5th day, something changed. While every day there were people gathered to watch the fight, on this day, Cuchulainn heard mockery coming from someone, and this, together with the stress of the fight, began to trigger his berserker mode. His warp spasms began, and Cuchulainn transformed into a giant berserker. He summoned leaped towards Ferdiad to give him a deadly blow with his sword, but Ferdiad reacted promptly, dodged the attack, grabbed a bucket of cold water, and swung it towards Cuchulainn to cool his fury. But it was of no use. The battle fury Cuchulainn felt possessed him completely, and gave him a strength Ferdiad could not match. Cuchulainn charged, and charged again, until, for a second, the battle fury seemed to grow cold. For something inside of Cuchulainn knew he did not want to kill his friend, and he hesitated. But Ferdiad, who saw his chance, did not, and managed to stab Cuchulainn into his chest. Cuchulainn shrieked, but between the blows of Ferdiad, he managed to grab his gay bollock, and threw it, and pierced Ferdiad. The gay bollock then did what he was known for, and broke into 1,000 pieces, splintering all through Ferdiad's body. Ferdiad collapsed, and though Cuchulainn was wounded, his battle fury cooled down, and he crawled to his foster brother's side. He held him in his arms, and both cursed Queen Maeve who had caused this. Then he stood up, and with the little strength he had left, he carried Ferdiad over the nearby river until they stood on Ulster soil, so that Ferdiad would not die on Maeve's land. He held his friend until Ferdiad drew his dying breath, and was no more. Cuchulainn was devastated and exhausted. He knew he couldn't fight in this state, and so he sent for the boys' troop of the Red Branch to take over his place until he was able to take arms up himself again. The boys came, 150 of them, while Cuchulainn managed with the last of his strength to reach his tent. There he collapsed, and soon after was visited by no one else but his father, Lugh of the Long Arm, who finally revealed his identity to the young warrior. Lugh did his best to heal Cuchulainn's wounds, and then gave him a sleeping potion, so that Cuchulainn would heal in his sleep. When Cuchulainn awoke, he found his wounds healed indeed, but he also found that the boys of the Red Branch were eradicated, even though they took out more warriors than they were themselves. And in the meantime, Maeve was able to steal the Bull of Cooley, which had started the war in the first place. But he also found that the men of Ulster finally got rid of the curse of Makar and were able to defend Ulster from Maeve's army. The final battle began. Cuchulainn, still not fully healed, tried to stay on the sidelines for as long as possible. But once he saw Fergus MacReish with his army, he had to approach him. He still didn't want to fight the man he adored for so long, but he reminded him of his promise. He once had spared his life. Now it was Fergus' turn to retreat. Fergus, a man of honor, agreed, and retreated together with thousands of his men. When the other warriors of Connacht realized what happened, they panicked and step by step retreated. In the end, as far as to Athlone, in the middle of the island of Ireland. Connacht was defeated, and Ulster was safe. But nonetheless, Despite all the losses she had suffered, Maeve was able to get a hold of the brown bull of Cooley she was so eager to possess. She had him bring to the field where the white bull of Ailill also stood, for she thought them happy together. But once the bulls saw each other, they charged at each other and fought a fierce fight, ending with the brown bull of Cooley impaling the white bull with his horns and killing him. But once the white bull was slain, and the brown bull recognized that he was alone and far from his home, which he would likely never see again, he grew deeply sad, and after only a few days died of a broken heart. And that is the end of the cattle raid of Cooley, the legendary Táin Bó Cúailnge. But it's not the end of the legend of Cuchulainn. How his story goes on, and how old acquaintances shaped his life, will be revealed in the next episode. See you next time. Slán slán.